Hi everyone, this is Kelly from The Truth and Story, and I'm here to do sort of a quick deck, Lenormand deck, some options for people getting into Lenormand first. My class is starting next week, and so I like to kind of put this out for my students, but sometimes other people who are just kind of interested and maybe dipping their toe in and would like maybe a good beginner deck. Like to see this as well, so I put this up just for in general. So these decks right here are so this was my very first Lenormand deck. This is the Mademoiselle Lenormand Cartomancy deck. This is a Piatnik deck. I just call it the Piatnik deck. This was my very first Lenormand deck. I have trimmed it, and it's very beautiful. It's very clear. I believe you can still pick up the I believe you can still pick this up like on Amazon or such like that. It's just it was my first deck. It's beautiful. I don't have anything negative to say about it. The card in the middle are quite beautiful and bold. The numbers are very clear. There's no names on it, but truthfully, you know, a good Lenormand, you should know that's a fish, you know, that's a clover, that's a ship, that's a house, that's a tree. Now, but see how where that could get, you know, this to me is very up front and center. I personally don't prefer there to be a boat in a cloud card, simply because, again, you don't even want to think about it, but that's very clearly a ship. A snake, a coffin, a bouquet, a scythe, a whip, a bird, a child, a fox. Of course, I know these cards, right? So this is a really nice, this was my first one. So I think that you can still get this. I'll put some links below. They are not affiliate links. I don't get anything for purchasing them. But that was my very first one. This was the second Lenormand, and probably my most used Lenormand deck, perhaps other than my own. This was called, I'm trying to remember, I think it was just called The Game of Hope. For the Seekers, The Game of Hope. So this was, it's very well used. I use this so much, and absolutely loved it. It's a mini size. I didn't like the cat in the clouds card. There were a couple little things that have since gotten removed, which is nice. I can't remember what the other one is. I think maybe there's a sexy leg in the whip card. I love this moon, even though it does have a hand in the moon. I still love that moon. I love the shape. Yeah, I never liked the sexy leg in the whip card because I don't read the whip card as sex or sexuality. For me, that would be with the lilies. So that was always, but I didn't care. I still use this all the time. Now, you can't get this version anymore. It's been redone into the 1889 Lenormand. And you can see I have obviously both sides. I've mostly been using this size because I can do a grand tableau without taking all of this stuff down, which can be a pain. So I mostly use this size, but I'll show you this one. I just think it's a beautiful deck. It's a beautiful back. I've probably, again, in terms of these images, I just, you know, I've used them since I started, very soon after I started reading Lenormand. The fish has gotten a little clearer, so there were some changes. I have a video about it. The moon no longer has the hand. I love the hand, but I do appreciate this. It's just kind of cleaned it up a little bit. The whip is just a whip and a broom now. There's no sexy leg there. Child has changed. So there's been some changes, but I believe all of the changes are for the better. There's no cat in the clouds, which I think it just makes it clear. It's just a beautiful, clear deck. Gorgeous cardstock, gorgeous images. It has the cards in the middle if you're one that uses those, but they don't overtake the picture. It's just one of my favorite Lenormand decks. And it's real clear, and I certainly can highly recommend it for beginners. So they have, again, they have a mini version or they have the regular version. So because of this version and then going into this would definitely be by far my most used tarot, or Lenormand deck, sorry. My most used Lenormand deck, obviously other than my own, which you actually can't purchase right now. I'm sold out other than a couple copies, and I'm going to order some, but not till I've got things set to produce the mini version. But obviously this is a deck that I made for myself. It reflects how I see Lenormand. Leading up to you know, releasing it, I used my trial version for all my readings. So clearly this is a deck that I've just, you know, since I've gotten it, I've just done tons and tons of readings with it. So these two would certainly be my most single used decks across the board. So I really can't recommend this one enough. It's just a deck that I love and I have used so much. And I do think it actually works really well for beginners because it's very clear. It's very beautiful. We do like beautiful things, right? There's nothing wrong with liking beautiful things. It's beautiful. I think that you could use that forever and be perfectly happy. But I do have some other options that I do like for beginner Lenormand decks. The Maybe Lenormand by Ryan Edwards is one of those. Now, this is a deck that is actually 52 cards. So you'll see there's like a 47. It goes beyond the 36, but you can just take the 36 away, or the 36 out, and leave the other two, and it gives you an extended deck later on down the road. But the images are so clear. It's a moon, right? It's clouds. It's a heart. This is a different card. It's the birds. It's the child. It's the key. It's the stork. That's a different card that we don't have in Lenormand. It's the pig. It's the lily card, right? So I just think it's beautiful. It's a cross. It's very clear. It's very beautiful. The art is gorgeous. I love the look of the playing card. People in here are just really neat. It's just a beautiful, simple, clean deck that is very easy to, you know, take your 36 cards out. Love the backing. Love the backing. And it's easily, readily available. This is a US Games produced deck. So you can easily get a hold of it. Again, I'll put links below. I think it's a fantastic beginner deck, and then it also can expand into a broader fortune-telling deck through adding in the other cards. So I think this is an excellent option. It's easy to find. That's what I'm trying to keep with things that are relatively easy. This is easy in the US. Obviously, it's an Etsy thing. If you're overseas, that's going to drive probably the cost of this up because it's an Etsy deck. Whereas this is well, I think US Games sometimes can be harder to find. I don't think this one particularly is hard to find, but you'll have to let me know. I think it's a fantastic beginner's deck, and I always recommend this as a great deck. The other one that I love is the Bluebird Lenormand. I guess this one went out of print for a little bit, but I have seen it on Amazon, so it must be back now. It's just beautiful. This is one of the, I think this might have been the third deck the third Lenormand deck. It has the little poems on it. I wouldn't necessarily say use the poems or anything, but they're just beautiful. It has the names on it. Some people do like to have the name reference. And so it does have the names, and one of the nice things about having a name reference is that you can use it for houses. So you could have one and then have a smaller one over the top of it, and it has the title right there. So some people do like to have the titles of the cards on it, and it does. It's a stork, it's a garden, it's a key, it's the sun, it's a cross, it's the road, it's the snake, it's the ship, it's the bear. It's just, A, the images are stunning, B, the titles are right there, and C, it probably has the most beautiful playing card insets. I don't even really use playing card insets in terms of reading, but I do still appreciate a beautiful playing card inset. Look at that. I mean, it's just gorgeous. So again, pretty easy, cheap Easy to find. This is the Bluebird Lenormand. I quite love that. You can also just use a deck of cards. So this is a game of hope that I made that is supposed to look like you pick this up, you know, it's the apocalypse and you've walked into an abandoned house and you can see the word hope in dust on the top of the box of cards. And when you open it up, I scrubbed them, I sanded them, I stenciled the names of them in here. So obviously I've gone to some trouble to make this look pretty cool for myself. But a cross is a cross is a cross, right? A coffin is a coffin is a coffin. A sun is a sun is a sun. An anchor is an anchor. So if you're just getting started and you don't know which deck you want to buy, but you want to get started working with Lenormand, of course you're not going to get directionality and things necessarily from this, although there are ways to do that, right? So, and you don't have to get this fancy either. You can literally get a playing card and a marker, and a list of Lenormand cards, which are all over the internet, and you can make yourself a deck of Lenormand and say, let's take the rider, which is directional. Of course, every deck you get, it might be facing in another direction, but you can literally put an arrow in the direction that the rider is going in, so you can still get directions. Man and the woman, put an arrow which way they're facing. So for just like, you know, $2 or $3, you can go to your Walgreens or your CVS or whatever your local drugstore or bookstore is and pick up a deck of playing cards and be either as basic as a marker or get a little bit artsy and make a pretty pretty version if you want. You can also on Amazon get blank playing cards. So they have playing card backs and blank fronts, and make yourself a deck there pretty cheaply with either just the words, or if you're artsy, you could draw a little picture of it on there. You could also get, you know, do some collaging where you cut out an image for each of the cards and stick it on there. Like, there's all kinds of DIY ways that you could make yourself a deck. But of course, just a set of playing cards, $2-3 at the store, and a marker, and you can work with Lenormand just as fully as anybody else, because that's part of the point of Lenormand. Part of the point of Lenormand is that the specific images don't matter. So when I read this broom, or this broom or whip over here, or if I read this rider versus this rider, nothing is going to change in terms of the meaning because of the image. Whereas sometimes more in Oracle or Tarot, we kind of look at, oh, this color is predominant, or we might like kind of roll into this person is posturing this way, or this woman is sitting across the cell and there's a key over here in the door, and that like adds another nuance or layer to the card. There's lots of ways in terms of Oracle and Tarot decks in which the image, even though there's a standard meaning perhaps, the image does influence nuances in how we might read the card. Whereas in Lenormand, traditionally that's not the case. It doesn't mean somebody can't do that, but traditionally the ship is a ship is a ship. Whether it is a little boat in a bathtub or it is a giant you know, cruiser on an ocean, it doesn't matter. The meaning to the ship is still the same. And so that makes it very easy to cheaply make yourself, or, you know, get a 3x5 cards, cut them in half and make your own deck, probably even cheaper than a set of playing cards. But I think a set of playing cards in most places you can find quite cheaply, so that you can kind of work along, go through some Lenormand tutorials and things of that nature, and kind of get a feel for whether you like the system, perhaps before you purchase any decks, or until you know which deck you want to buy. So I actually think this is a really great way. I have seen people who've done this with in other classes, where they have written keywords on the sides of the cards. You can write whatever you want on it, right? So it's a great way to make yourself a learning deck. Just as even in my rune class, I have a set of runes where, you know, just circle wood pieces where I've written the name of the rune and the meaning of the name, or the name in English. And so that's a way to learn the basic basic understanding of it. You can do the same thing with Lenormand, where you can write the meaning right there on the card itself to start to begin to work with the system. So really, really cheap way to do that. Of course, thankfully, for the most part, Lenormand decks are cheaper. I mean, they can get beautiful and they can get expensive, but for the most part, you can pick up a fairly cheap Lenormand deck comparatively to something like Tarot or Oracle. This one may be a little bit more. I can't remember what this was. I have the price on here. This is because this is a 52. It's full. It's a larger deck than normal, but this is a fantastic starter. Another one that I absolutely love that I just have to point out for those of us who love history, right? This is the Earl Lenormand, and I believe you can get this on Amazon now. This was sent to me, but before I think you couldn't find it out and about, but you can actually. I saw this on Amazon recently. This is an AGM deck, Das Spiel der Hoffnung. But this is the oldest, I think the oldest intact Lenormand deck that we have from 1799. And I just love it. I talk about it when I teach, and so after my class, somebody had sent this to me, and I just love it because, you know, being able to see the the kind of the cards. I think we do know that there's one, that this was a sort of revision of one before it, but this is what we have, and it would probably be fairly close to this. And it has two types of playing cards, and it has the playing cards on there because it was billed sort of as you could play, you know, German playing cards. You can German, sorry, over here with the acorns, or you can play playing cards with the spades and the hearts, and so it was like you could have it all. You can have this game, the game of hope here. You can also play German games, and you can play French and Italian games, I'm assuming, with the other deck. And so it was kind of billed as that one-stop, all things you can play with, right? And then a little note saying, well, you could also, you know, do some divination with it as well. So I do love this. I actually use this. I do need to like do a linen color on the sides, but I do actually use this for 9 cards. It's too large to use for me as a grand tableau, because even if I cleared everything off my desk, I could not do a grand tableau in which this would all show. So I don't use it for grand tableaus, but I do use it for 9 cards, and I absolutely love just that sort of touching back into history. It also has the original rules to the game. It's a treat for me, and there are some people who like that kind of treat. When they're learning something, they want to tap into the history of it. This is a beautiful way to do that. Some people like more modern decks. This is definitely going to be a little bit more on the pricey side of things. This is a 7th Sphere Lenormand by Labyrinthos, but I did want to at least point it out because it does have a very modern aesthetic to it. It is that plastic that they are known for, which is gorgeous to shuffle. It's white with rose gold on it. It has anima and animus for the male and the female, but otherwise it is a very, you know, it's got the name on it, the number on it, it's got the little playing card association star, it's a lily, it's a fish. It's actually quite sort of illustrative style, and it's very clear and concise. I think it's really a beautiful deck. If you really like that modern aesthetic, it's a beautiful one, and I think it works very well as a beginning deck because it's just so clean and clear. So that is also an option. I wanted to just kind of get a little bit of a range here of options that you can have. There used to be, obviously, when I started reading Lenormand, there weren't a lot of decks out. Again, this was my first, which I really got more for my playing card collection and then fell in love with it. This was my second, which is now this one. And I remember, trying to remember, oh, I think the Bluebird was certainly one of the earlier ones. But there weren't as many decks out there. There weren't books in English. There weren't a lot of decks out. And Now there's tons of them. If you go on Etsy, especially, you can see there's a lot of different Lenormand decks out there. For a beginner's deck, what I would look for are things that are very clear, what the image are, that don't change things up, because some people have creatively changed things up, like a scythe to scissors or something like that, which is kind of fun and playful, and I don't have an issue with it. But just in terms of learning, I'm a big proponent of kind of learn your base tradition, and then you can start to leap off away from things after that. So this is a beautiful deck. This is the other one I wanted to point out because I've been using it a lot. This is the Anna K. It's in a different box. It doesn't come in this. I got this at my craft store. It had some little craft cards in it, but it fits it perfectly. This is the Anna K. Lenormand. This is a little busier. It does have the titles on them, but I do love this. I do love this deck. It just has an interesting perspective. But there's definitely a lot more going on here. I think, though, because it does have the titles on, like it's a very interesting ring here that's holding together these sails or this fabric in some way. But I still think it's a really beautiful, and again, because of the title, it does make it to be a quite beautiful and useful reading. A little busier perhaps than you might like, but again, some people like that aesthetic, so I wanted to at least point this out. This is the Anna K. Lenormand. Really love this one. Use this one. I use this in my deck probably the most, at least in 2018. And so yeah, that's all I really wanted to say. I just wanted to kind of do a quick perusal of a couple decks. Like I said, I think these are easy to find here. This, you know, if you're out of the United States, might take a little bit longer to get to you because it is an Etsy. It has to be sent, so it would not be on Amazon overseas. This is definitely a little bit of a pricier range. But it's beautiful if you want a more modern sort of illustrative feel to it. But, you know, this is all you need is a deck of playing cards. And then you can modify that into a Lenormand deck until you're ready to purchase a deck, or until you find that one that really speaks to you and kind of hits all your buttons. This is a great, and you can get beautiful. I have a collection of stunning playing cards because I collected playing cards before I ever collected tarot decks or started even reading with tarot. So there's absolutely beautiful playing card decks out there that you could make a gorgeous, if you're willing to write on them. Now, I'm not willing to write on this particular deck, but if you're willing to write on them, you can take a beautiful playing card deck and turn it into a beautiful Lenormand deck, should you so choose. And even at the, even if you go to, like, I know our Barnes & Noble bookstore has lots of, you know, $7, $8 decks that are still really lovely decks, but I wouldn't mind buying one of those and writing on it and make a pretty playing card Lenormand that way either. And this is actually a really gorgeous set of cards that I made this out of as well. And then I just scuffed it up, and again, I love this. This is my Apocalypse Lenormand deck, and I absolutely love it. So, you know, and this certainly was probably more in the, I'm guessing, $8 range than the $3 range, but you can get a $3 deck and it will work. So don't let that be a hindrance to playing around with Lenormand and giving it a go, because you can start off really quite cheaply, and certainly really cheap if you're willing to put a little bit of time and writing power into it. So I hope that this helps. I wish you all the joy of the journey that you are going to possibly be taking with Lenormand.